Reddit, what simple thing can accidentally end your life? I once witnessed a person faint at a concert. They hadn't eaten or hydrated all day, and when they finally got up to dance, they collapsed. It's scary how neglecting basic needs can lead to life-threatening situations. Remember to stay hydrated and nourished, especially in crowded places. I learned the hard way that not securing your laptop properly can lead to disaster. I was rushing to leave my apartment, and as I grabbed my bag, my top fell and cracked the screen. It ended up costing me a fortune to fix. It's a reminder to always be mindful of your belongings, especially when you're in a hurry. A family friend nearly died from a freak accident involving a lawnmower. He was cutting the grass and leaned over to pick up a stick without turning it off first. The mower kicked back, and he was lucky to escape with just a serious injury. It's a harsh reminder to always turn off power tools before reaching into the danger zone. I know someone who didn't realize they were lactose intolerant until it was too late. They went out for ice cream, and it ended in a trip to the hospital due to severe stomach pain. It's wild how something as simple as a food intolerance can turn into a serious situation, especially when you don't know what's causing it. I once had a friend who ignored a persistent cough, thinking it was just allergies. Months later, he was diagnosed with a serious respiratory condition that could have been treated much earlier if he hadn't brushed it off. It taught me the importance of listening to your body and getting checked out when something feels off. A colleague of mine was climbing a ladder to change a light bulb and fell off because he was trying to stretch too far instead of repositioning the ladder. He ended up with a concussion and some broken ribs. It's a reminder that safety should always come first, no matter how trivial the task may seem. I remember hearing about a woman who got seriously burned while cooking. She was boiling water and reached over to grab something from the counter without thinking. The steam hit her face, and she ended up with second-degree burns. It's a reminder to always be aware of your surroundings in the kitchen and take your time. I have a friend who almost drowned while trying to impress others by diving into a deep pool without knowing how deep it was. He misjudged the height and ended up hitting his head on the bottom. Thankfully, a lifeguard saw him struggle and jumped in to help. It's a terrifying reminder that bravado can lead to life-threatening situations. One summer, my neighbor left his grill unattended while cooking burgers. He stepped inside for just a moment, and when he came back out, the grill had caught fire. Thankfully, he managed to put it out quickly, but it could have easily turned into a full-blown fire. Always keep an eye on things when cooking outdoors. I heard about someone who was hiking and didn't bring enough water. They got dehydrated and disoriented, leading to a rescue situation. It made me realize how essential it is to plan ahead and bring the right supplies for outdoor activities. You can never be too prepared. I once had a friend who got sick after eating expired food. He thought it would be fine because it looked okay, but he ended up with food poisoning that left him bedridden for days. It's a harsh lesson about food safety and how one small oversight can lead to severe consequences. A guy I know was cleaning his gun when it accidentally discharged. Thankfully, he was following heat protocols and had the barrel pointed in a safe direction, but it was a shocking reminder of how easily things can go wrong if you're not cautious. I learned about someone who fell off their bike because they were distracted by their phone. They didn't see a pothole and hit it hard, ending up with a sprained wrist and bruised ribs. It's a wake-up call to be aware of your surroundings, especially while biking or walking. I once saw a documentary about a man who died from a blood clot that formed after a long flight. He thought he was fine, but when he landed, he collapsed at the airport. It's a reminder to move around during long travels and stay hydrated to prevent health issues. I had a friend who was playing with a rubber band and ended up snapping it across his eye. It didn't seem like a big deal, but it resulted in a serious eye injury that required medical attention. It's incredible how even the smallest things can cause significant harm if you're not careful. I know someone who fell while trying to take a selfie on a cliff. They lost their balance and ended up with some severe injuries. It's a reminder to be cautious about trying to capture the perfect moment, especially in risky situations. One time, my brother was biking without a helmet. He had a minor accident and fell off, hitting his head on the pavement. Luckily, he was okay, but it was a sobering reminder that wearing a helmet is crucial for safety. I read about someone who slipped on a wet floor in a grocery store and hit their head. They suffered a severe concussion and were in the hospital for weeks. It's a reminder to be cautious everywhere. A friend of mine got a really bad cut from a broken glass while cleaning. She thought it was just a small scratch, but it got infected and almost turned into sepsis. Never underestimate a small injury. I know someone who had a heart attack while shoveling snow. It was just a regular day, but the combination of cold and exertion took him down. Always take care during winter. I used to think eating raw cookie dough was safe until I learned about the risks of salmonella from the eggs. I stopped after hearing a horror story about someone who got really sick from it. I had a coworker who was allergic to peanuts but didn't think it was a big deal. One day he had a snack without checking the label and it almost killed him. Always check those labels. I once read about a guy who died from using a public restroom without washing his hands. He got infected with a rare virus and didn't make it. It made me rethink how careful we should be with hygiene. My sister had a friend who didn't know she was pregnant until she went into labor. She thought she was just gaining weight. The baby was born at home and they had to rush to the hospital. It was a chaotic situation. A family member had a car accident because they were trying to adjust the radio while driving. It only took a moment of distraction and they ended up in a ditch. Pay attention, people. I remember a story about a woman who fell off her bike and hit her head. She wasn't wearing a helmet and it caused serious brain damage. Now, I always wear a helmet when I ride. I know someone who had a severe allergic reaction to a bee sting. They were in a park and didn't have their EpiPen. It was terrifying to see them struggle to breathe. Always carry your allergy meds. One summer, I accidentally left a candle burning while I went to bed. I woke up to the smell of smoke. Luckily, it hadn't caught anything on fire, but it was a scary wake-up call. I once met a guy who got a paper cut at work that became infected. It turned into a nasty abscess, and he ended up needing surgery. It was shocking how a small cut could turn so serious. I used to eat leftovers without checking how long they had been in the fridge. One day, I got food poisoning from some old chicken. It was horrible. Now, I always check dates before eating. I've heard stories about people drowning in their own bathtubs after falling asleep. It's so easy to get comfortable and let your guard down. Always be cautious when batting. I learned that driving while tired can be just as dangerous as driving drunk. A friend of mine dozed off and crashed into a tree. Thankfully, they survived, but it was a brutal reminder to stay alert. I saw a news story about a child who died after getting stuck in a toy box. It was a tragic accident that could have been avoided with better safety measures. Always keep an eye on kids. I have a relative who got injured trying to help a friend move. He strained his back and ended up needing surgery. Sometimes being helpful can lead to unexpected consequences. A friend of mine slipped on ice and broke her ankle while walking to her car. It was such a simple thing that turned into a major injury. Always watch your step in winter. I remember hearing about a guy who died from eating too much fast food in one sitting. His heart just couldn't handle it. Moderation really is key when it comes to eating. I used to think I was safe from high blood pressure because I was young. Then I found out my numbers were alarming. It shocked me into changing my diet and lifestyle. I heard a story about someone who got hurt using a power tool without safety gear. They ended up with a serious injury that could have been avoided. Always wear protective equipment. I know someone who had a severe reaction to a medication because they didn't read the side effects. It was a scary experience that made them reconsider how they approached medications.